I'm Eric Peterson, and you're listening to Pod Clubhouse.
Pod Clubhouse.
Imagine all the pee holes. It's easy if you try. Yeah, and then it could go on. I'll record a full version and send it to you guys.
Welcome to Kevin Can Podcast Himself, your dedicated after-show podcast for the AMC series Kevin Can Fuck Himself. This is Mike. Tonight, you may be expecting our finale coverage episode, but you'd be wrong. If you've read the name of this episode on your podcast player or on podclubhouse.com, wherever you're listening to it, you'll know that this is not our coverage of the finale episode. This is our interview with Eric Peterson. We were so excited to have Eric come back. We spoke to him at the end of season 1 of the series. We actually spoke to him weeks ago, but because we wanted to talk about the series finale, we've been sitting on this interview now for about a month. So we are so excited to bring you our interview with Eric Peterson. We get into Kevin and the journey to that crazy finale episode. Now listen, if you haven't watched the series finale yet, please don't listen to this interview yet. Go watch the finale, then come back and listen to it, because we talk about things that happen in the series finale. And when this is being released, AMC Plus viewers have seen the series finale. AMC viewers have not yet seen the finale. So don't be spoiled ahead of time. Resist listening to this great interview with Eric Peterson until you have seen the series finale, and then you can come back and listen to it. All right? With that spoiler warning out of the way, without further ado, here is our interview with Kevin McRoberts himself, Eric Peterson. Hope you enjoy. Joining us tonight on Kevin Can Podcast Himself, we are pleased to welcome back that wild dude himself, Eric Peterson. Eric, thank you so much for joining us once again. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm happy to talk with you guys again.
Somehow it has been over a year since we last spoke, so let's catch up a little bit. Talk to us a little bit about fan reactions, interactions you had, just the way you were received, or Kevin received, and the show was received following the end of season 1.
Obviously, it was a very buzzy show. You know, there was a lot of articles being written about it, and people were talking about it, and lots of cool blog posts, and you guys are doing such a great job with breaking down each episode. So I felt like, definitely, like, industry wise, it felt like it was a very buzzy kind of show. But what was really cool was to see sort of the regular people of the world be like, hey, I saw your show. It's so great. It's so smart. And, now I will say, in regards to reactions to Kevin, it was very mixed, and nobody would say to my face, like, oh my God, you're a disgusting piece of shit. But I mean, they definitely wrote it all over the internet. But, it's funny. I've really thought about this, because I've had a good amount of people be like, I think Kevin's pretty great. I don't know what's wrong with him. And I'm like, okay, I can't tell if you're saying that to me because I'm standing here face to face with you and maybe you're my friend or something. But like, there definitely was there was both sides to the coin, which is interesting. And we'll see how people feel, once season 2 is over, once they get to really see what, the truth of Kevin is like, if they still feel the same way. But on the whole, the reaction was that the show was super smart. It was a great premise, that it was, suspenseful, and people loved that. They liked the comedy sort of dropped into little parts of the show. So yeah, people seem to be very happy and excited about it.
Well, talk to us a little bit about how it was different coming back for season 2. I mean, you knew some things about the fact that this was going to be the last season and you'd be wrapping this up. And how is it different than when you approached this first season, where this was like a brand new concept for you guys?
Well, I mean, I think, and we may have even talked about this idea last time we talked, I'm not sure, but one of the sort of hallmarks of a classic sitcom character is that they don't change, right? Is that like, that's why we like sitcoms, because we know how Norm is going to respond when he gets his beer. And he may have a different line each week on Cheers, but like, we know what it's going to be and we're wanting to see that. So that's like the whole idea of sitcom characters, is that they don't really have much emotional growth. They kind of stay, you know, where they are. So the first season, that was sort of a point that I made to like not show any kind of growth. And then in this season, because obviously going into it, we were made aware that it was the end of the show. And, you know, speaking with Valerie and Craig and kind of seeing like where it was going, I was able to like, hopefully, you know, sort of put in little cracks, and like by episode 5, 6, 7, you really are starting to see Kevin kind of like notice that the world is changing around him. And then in the finale, obviously it's the real sort of come to Jesus moment. But yeah, the approach was definitely different this second season, knowing that the story was going to be concluding.
People who were watching the show, even as early as episode 1, the end of episode 1, I think can tell in the multicam that the tone shifted, or is shifting. The idea that Allison gets the joke now instead of being the butt of the joke, and Kevin is maybe increasingly being the butt of the joke, and that the interactions with Neil and Pete are becoming more antagonistic. Yeah. Did that require you to play those scenes differently? Did you have to start playing Kevin differently because of that shift in tone?
I think that it took some of the joy out of some of the scenes. You know, one of the big things that I was always trying to infuse into Kevin was this sense of like happiness and joy, only knowing that the contrast of what the truth was and what was revealed in the single cam would make it that much more jarring. So it was, you know, it was really important to me that Kevin is like really happy-go-lucky and really sort of filled with at least joy in his mind, you know. And so by the end of season 2, when, you know, like Dad is moved out and Neil is really like not responding, and, you know, there's the great scene where I'm sitting at a table and I'm just saying like, there's nobody here. I'm very uncomfortable with this, with nobody to like laugh at my jokes. And I think that's like a really like honest moment for Kevin, where we really get to see his sort of mental awareness that things are really changing. So I think the way that I changed in regards to like playing him, I wanted to show that veneer was starting to crack, not completely fall away, but was definitely starting to crack.
A lot of swashbuckler, you know, just saying it so it sounds cool in the kitchen by yourself.
Yes.
Well, and you had the addition of the big morning beard that you were sporting there. How was that?
That was awesome. I got to say, I loved the beard. I definitely sent a picture of myself in the beard to my agent, and they were like, "Oh, you got to grow that out. That's a great look on you." And I was like, "Oh, okay." No, it was really fun. You know, I've never had a beard that big in my actual life. So, you know, I've always sort of dreamed of being one of those mountain men that had a big beard like that. So I really enjoyed wearing it. And it definitely changed Kevin, you know, like it even just not that it's heavy, it's, you know, made of hair, but like just the feeling of it was so different. You know, that last scene where he has the beard, or the last episode when he has the beard and, you know, Aaron Hayes is there, everything was so vastly different. And I felt like what I was trying to do was to show that like Kevin is really grasping for straws to like reassemble his life from how it's been slowly cracking away from him, and he's like forcing, you know, round pegs into square holes, and everything is slipping away from him. But yeah, the beard was great. I loved having it.
I'm glad you brought up Erin Hayes, because we know that viewers are going to get a complete kick out of seeing her with you. Tell us a little bit about working with her.
It was great. You know, it's funny, when the like press release came out that I was cast as Kevin, and obviously Erin had already, like, I think Vulture wrote an article about like, AMC, you better cast Erin Hayes in this show or you're cowards or something like that. So she was aware of the show, and that it was sort of, you know, in response to what happened to her on, you know, Kevin Can Wait. So she was aware of the show. I got announced that I was going to be playing Kevin. And that week that all happened, I was actually doing a workshop of a new musical with her. And so that was going to be done at the Pasadena Playhouse. And so we were actually working together when that all sort of came to light. And so she was very excited about the show. And then once they told me that they were going to bring her in for the finale, I was like, oh, that's brilliant. I love that. And so it was great to like see her again. And I was like, yeah, this is crazy. Like now it's full circle. And I definitely did ask her, I was like, what is this like? You know, what does this feel like for you being like on a multicam set that's somehow inspired by your real life? And she was like, it's odd. It's a very full circle kind of odd moment, but it's very cool. And I mean, I loved like the actual logistics of working with her was great because she is a multicam pro. Like she knew how to like the bump set volley of the rhythm of multicam. She was so ready and jumped right in. So filming those scenes was really great. Yeah, it was awesome.
It was the ultimate meta moment seeing her,
yeah.
And especially since she had been announced before season 2 began. And so people were kind of waiting. There were a bunch of guest stars. You have Rachel Dratch came on during the season and Perry Gilpin, but like Erin Hayes, because of what she represents and this show in particular, it was like, when is she coming? And then what a great reveal for the Molly character. Let's talk about the finale episode, which this is coming out after people have seen it. What do you think when you read the script for episode 8 and that you enter the long awaited entry into the single cam for Kevin? What's your reaction?
I gotta say, I mean, obviously I was so stoked. If I was in charge and making decisions, I probably would have shown Kevin a little earlier in the single cam, but I do think by waiting until the very end, it does sort of just build that drama of like, you know, the idea that, you know, violence is always worse in our minds than it is if we actually see it, right? So this sort of offstage drama of like, what is Kevin really like? The fact that it built all the way up to the, you know, finale of the show really, I hope gave it the weight that it needed. But getting to shoot it was great. I was so excited to like really show that darker side of Kevin. I love the way that Valerie wrote the ending, that it really kind of it's not 100% that he's dead, but I think we can assume. But I just sort of love the not putting a stamp on it in a way, because I think maybe Kevin doesn't deserve to have a stamp on the end of his life, you know, and if it was indeed the end of his life. So I was super excited about doing that scene and getting to do a much more dramatic scene with Annie, and, you know, shooting obviously in a darker room with no audience, and all of that was great. And I mean, there's even stuff that we did that didn't make the cut. I mean, there was like a whole thing where like kind of right as she is pulling me into the single cam, we did a thing where I like wiped the whole table that's behind the couch, and like all of the knickknacks and matchbooks and, you know, our stuff just goes flying against the wall kind of near her. I think they cut it because it was pretty intense. I mean, it was very, very intense. And I think waiting to sort of let the pressure build, and he really, really is getting in her face, hopefully will make an audience feel scared and have a lot of realizations about what they've thought about Kevin. Some people will be, I think, confirmed, and some people may be like, whoa, this is not the Kevin we know and love. So we'll see.
I want to play you a clip from that scene between you and Annie, or between Kevin and Allison. I want to talk a little bit about it. Let's
sure.
Take a listen real quick.
Kevin, where is everyone?
Everyone who?
Pete, Neil, Molly.
What do you know? What did you say to Molly?
Just the truth. What Pete knew. And Neil. That you're a goddamn cancer.
No, this does not happen to me. Not from my wife. No! Allison, without me, you will have nothing. Because I will fucking destroy you.
Do your worst.
That's a holy shit moment, I think, for anyone. But I mean, you know what I think it is? I think it's hearing you curse, because one thing we've played with talking about the podcast on the podcast this season is we've been playing the game of, in the multicam, imagining what that sounds like if Kevin said it in the single cam.
Right.
Because with the Diane and Chuck storyline, we're going with this idea that Chuck is Kevin in the single cam world, but like
future
older.
Kevin. Yeah,
he's like future Kevin, and so you could see some of the menace via that way. Here, you actually get to see it. Like the audience is finally kind of stripped bare to see it. How do you approach that scene, given up until now you've spent 15 and a half episodes of just pratfalls and physical comedy and your pants falling down? Like, what's that day when you're going to shoot that? Like, how do you do it the same, or is it just another day, just different lines?
Because I have a background in doing a lot of theater, whenever I talk to especially like kids, college kids or whatever, they're like, what's the difference between theater acting and TV acting? And I'm always, my sort of stock answer is that it's all the same acting. It's just a matter of levers, right? And there's little, if you imagine a producer's board in like a studio, it's just different levers. Like, is this moment bigger, or is this louder, or is this facial expression, huge or small? And obviously the multicam is much more akin to theater acting because of how broad it is and physical it is. And so on the day of shooting that big final scene, it was really just about keeping that same truth. And it helps, to be in the same location that we've been shooting all of those multicam scenes, and I'm still in the wardrobe that I've been wearing. And so it all feels like Kevin, and it's just about sort of turning down that dial massively. I think the script and the way the scene was written was so good that it was pretty easy to like kind of drop a lot of the extra Kevin stuff and just be like, he is truly seeing his world collapse in front of him in that moment. And so it really, he may have had clues before, but this is really where he's like, oh shit, this is fucking over. Like, this is really over. And my hijinks and my pleading and my, oh babe, can't you forgive me? Like, all that is gone. It's over. It's not going to work. And he knows that. In regards to like how I acted it, I think it was really just a trusting the script, trusting that the way it was shot would feel drastically different. And I mean, I'm very proud of it. I thought it was a really great scene. And when I watched it myself, I was like, wow, I'm moved by this. Good job to me. I think I did a good job, and obviously to Annie as well, but she's in the single cam much more often. So, but yeah, I was very proud of it.
So as an actor, which did you find more challenging? Like those elaborate physical bits, like the buffalo wings all in your eyes and stuff, which I think Mike said he laughed for like an hour.
When you say my eyes are sweaty, I swear to God, I think I launched coffee across my living room.
Did you catch one of my favorite bits from that little moment is when I wiped my face with tinfoil?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's just really dumb Kevin behavior there.
It's such a ballet though, because it ends with you and Alex on your knees, kind of like genuflecting in like the reporter, and he's got like the little teapot in his hand.
Teacup,
it's such a great moment. It's like 2 minutes of just straight up classic vaudeville bits.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say in Caroline, in regards to like what was more difficult, the final scene is probably more difficult for me just because the physical comedy stuff comes pretty naturally to me. So that's sort of right in my wheelhouse. As we shot multiple takes of the final scene, not every time, but there was times where, Anna or Val would be like, all right, I think we can go smaller. I think we can be smaller. And I was like, all right, cool. I just don't like thinking, because of playing Kevin with such a big bravado and just size wise, it was just so big and broad. It was trying to match the reality of what single camera is without totally losing Kevin, but also it has to feel like it is the same guy. It can't be a totally different character. So yeah, I'd say the easier one was the pratfalling and slapstick stuff, but both were very fun to do.
Let's take listeners behind TV magic a little bit. How much fire did they let you play with, or was that just all kind of CGI, like a special effects afterwards?
It was almost all real fire. Yeah, wow. I think they maybe added a tiny bit, but most of it was really me lighting it on fire, and I would drop like the passport lid on fire into the thing, and then they had, I think, a little like inside the bottom of the trash can was a little sort of gas fire contraption that would add to it. But I mean, it was definitely real fire. One of the big things was with that beard, it was very important for me not to get too too close to the fire because that beard would have gone up in a second.
It's like a scarecrow.
The spirit gum on your face alone.
For real. So, but I loved that last little scene of, Kevin sort of burning down the joint and unintentionally as he's trying to burn down Allison, and
then passing out. I mean, that's the
and
ultimate
then passing
Kevin way
out.
to go.
Yeah. Oh,
Right.
just totally. Yeah. You almost wonder, like, if he did he die because like of smoke inhalation? Did he die? Did he literally burn to death? Did he like wake up and try to get out?
You're scary. You're like, did his flesh burn? I need to know.
Did his flesh burn? I mean, I think a lot of people would prefer if it did. So,
Yeah.
I think
what?
it's good
I
to
love
know.
like how you said that they left it a little ambiguous there, because I think for women especially, but anyone, any partner that has felt abused like Allison does, the idea that he could still be out there, it's sort of that sleeping with the enemy, like you've gotten away, but like somehow the towel is fixed in the bathroom in a way you didn't do, kind of thing. Like he could still be out there because there's no confirmation for us that he's really gone. And also as audience, I think it nods to us and says, hey, P.S., real Kevins are out there and like still are out there.
100%. That's exactly how I saw it as well. The ambiguousness of it lets us know that, like, not only for Allison that she will constantly have that fear, but what you said of just that Kevins are out there everywhere and on television and in real life. So, I loved how it ended. I thought it was very cool.
So when all is said and done, what do you hope people take away from Kevin and Kevin Can Fuck Himself? And will it change what you audition for or how you look at characters in the future?
That's a great question. I'm actually curious as to how it will affect. I'll answer what I hope people to take away in a second, but in regards to like what I'll audition for in the future, because I have a relatively large history doing multicam comedy and big broad comedy, and it is something, as I said, that I love to do. I do wonder if being a part of this show, which was really with a hot edge knife poking at those types of shows, if there will be any sort of like resentment that like, oh no, you can't now do one of these shows. Like you can't then be in one of them. I do think there have been some things that my, managers and agents have sent me that I'm like, this is pretty like right on the nose of Kevin. I don't think we can do this same sort of, bastardly character.
It's like Kelvin.
Exactly.
Kelvin McRoberts comes from.
That's right.
Exactly.
But in regards to like what I hope people take away, I hope that, it definitely will start conversations, honest conversations about our collective nostalgia for television, right? Like I'm sure I've talked with you guys about this. Like I love television and I love sitcoms. And it's, I think, one of the reasons that I really loved this show. And it's not that I would hope that people never watch another sitcom, but that we can just be more enlightened in our viewing habits, as audiences become more progressive and more aware of, societal things that are happening and how they're then represented in characters on television, and how each of those two things I feel really feed each other. You can say that television is a reflection of, society, but society is definitely influenced by television. So it's sort of that, snake eating its own tail kind of idea. And I hope that people will take away that it was a show with a great idea, great premise, and it hopefully will make people think about what they're watching. And as one of my favorite lines in the whole show is from, I think, episode 4 of the first season, when Annie says, or as Allison says, like, what were you laughing at? Like, you just sat there and laughed at him, and did you ever really think about it? I think that's the thesis of the show. So I hope that people will view it as this interesting, weird little show that broke some barriers and maybe set up a new storytelling device that other shows will use in the future, and that we can sort of view our collective television experience with more enlightenment and empathy and compassion.
Well, given that, I think we would be remiss if we didn't ask you what you thought about the ending with Allison and Patty, given that we want, our audiences to be rethinking these shows. What did Eric think, and what do you think Kevin would think?
I mean, I liked how they ended it. I thought that, Annie and Mary Hollis had such great chemistry as people and as friends, and they really poured that into their characters. And I think that's why people have loved Petersen, which I believe is what people are calling
Yes.
them as a group. I think that's why people rooted for them, and their off-screen sort of friendship really informed it. And I kind of like that they're heading off into a new world with, new options, and as much as they can sort of have wiped the slate clean of this chapter of their lives. But I think it's mostly a credit to Andy and Mary Hollis for, just how brilliant they were portraying these characters and portraying the arc of these characters and how they were dealing with multiple crises at the same time. And so, yeah, I think the ending is great.
I think it's a huge credit to Valerie that we sat for probably 10 minutes in our last podcast trying to put some sort of label or descriptor on what Petersen was as a relationship. Like, what exactly are they? And we were like, you know what? We were just like, I invite listeners to tell us, what do you think exactly? Because I think this is a new kind of like, we can support each other and encourage each other. And we don't necessarily have the right label for that exactly, which seems weird. It feels that way. We couldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was definitely in the scripts, there was definitely references in, offstage action or, the subtext of scenes that there was romantic feelings between, and maybe not coming both directions, but at least from Patty to Allison. I think that the fact that it never is like fully articulated on what that is. And some people watch the show and are like, man, what a great story about two female friends who just really are there for each other. And some people see it as a story as like not quite fulfilled, romantic relationship. I kind of like that is unclear and that the audience is like left to feel however they feel about watching the way that those two people interact, because I feel like we're definitely in a time of label enlightenment. The younger generation really does not like labels of like asexual or bisexual or homosexual or whatever. Like, they really want to feel like I'm just a person existing in the world and I love people, and that can, articulate itself in many different ways. But to have to put like a classic label is not what, the sort of younger generation of Americans really want. And so I think that was definitely a nod to sort of where that generation is at. And I think that, the whole idea of the show is to sort of enlighten people to the truth of what we're seeing on TV and make it more modern and relatable.
I love that. We came up with the Schitt's Creek explanation of the wine bottles and labels and focusing more what's on the bottle than what's on the label. That's
exactly it. Exactly.
A little bit more lighthearted question than we've had. Eagle-eyed viewers are going to see in the finale that with the 6-month time jump, Life has added 3 more points in the Kevin versus Life board, bringing the total to 6.
Yes.
And we were curious if you had any guesses. You, Eric, had any guesses about what the 3 new Life wins were?
Oh, man, I have not thought about that. But I would say definitely, I think getting Molly as my new girlfriend, he's going to count as a win, and sort of being able to not miss a beat in his life as much as he can, just sort of like, OK, wife dead, new wife. And keep going, I think that's definitely one of the wins. I'd like to think that there was something to do with, actually meeting, Bill Belichick or somehow he ran into Brady on the tee or something and was able to get Brady to sign his butt cheek or something. And, so I'd like to think at least one of them had to do with the Patriots in some way. And then, he's a big fan of fire. One of my favorite lines is how he says something like, I caused that fire and 2 other big ones, but that's not what we're talking about right now. So I'd like to think that maybe it's, somebody else got blamed for one of those fires and he knew he was off the hook for one of his many arsons that he's committed.
Well, and we definitely noticed all the fidgeting with the lighter, throughout with, Patty and Allison. And it seems like it was there was a lot more leaning into the fireplace into this people along the way. Loving all that.
They loved that little fidget spinner lighter, and the fact that the end of the show is obviously fire is a major factor. I think that was really apropos. But I will say this, and this is only because I recently went on a family trip to Yellowstone, which I loved. It was spectacular if you've never gone up to Yellowstone Park. But one of the things they were talking about in Yellowstone was how, fire is really a big part of a forest's life. And like, so when there are fires that are caused by lightning or whatever, the park system really kind of lets those fires burn. As long as they're not going to hurt humans or destroy like classic structures, they really let those fires burn, because the fire, it just is the sign of rebirth. You know, they talked about at Yellowstone these particular trees that have pine cones that only are activated by extreme heat, and when these trees are burning, these pine cones shoot out little seeds, and they kind of like and they shoot around, and then popcorn. And then they plant a new forest, you know. So that in mind, that whole idea of like fire not necessarily being a sign of death but more a sign of rebirth, I think is really sort of a nice metaphor for the season, or scene in the season, because as opposed to thinking of the fire at the end of the show as the death of something, I think it's more the rebirth of all those characters. That's right.
I love it. Well, before you go, since this is probably the last time we get to talk to you about this one, I definitely want to know if you have any memories or anything from on the set that you want to share with our listeners, just kind of parting feelings about the whole thing.
You know, thank you. And I do have to say this. You guys have done such a great job of breaking down this show and what it means and what each moment means and what all these characters represent. And I've listened to most of your episodes, and I think they're just so great. And you guys have such like honest reactions, but also like are enlightened and intelligent. And I think you've done such a bang up job with this whole podcast. So congrats to you guys.
You're very sweet on that. But I have to tell you, you don't know how many times because we've gotten to talk to you, Eric, that I have to not say things like, man, I just want to punch Kevin in the face, because I'm like, but I don't want to punch Eric, so I have to pull back on that. It's like, it's very good to get to know you as a human being, because it definitely, Kevin.
We've used your promo, I'm Eric Peterson, you're listening to Pod Clubhouse. We've used it, in front of a couple of episodes.
Yeah.
And every time I hear it, I'm like, oh yes, Eric is not Kevin.
He's
they have very different voices.
Very different.
Like Eric.
Yes.
We like
yes. Thank you guys. Thank you. But my main takeaway from the show, in regards to like memories or what I enjoyed about it, number one, I'm going to say I loved Boston. I had been to Boston a few times, but really getting over the 2 seasons to truly live in Boston. And in the first season, my family was with me, and we lived in Scituate, Massachusetts, which is a little place on the South Shore, right by the water. And then the second season, me and Alex and Ray all rented a house in Marshfield, which is also on the South Shore, right on the beach. And so I really got to like spend legitimate time in New England, and I have just completely fallen in love with the place. And I've said to my wife, if we had to move somewhere that wasn't, for family or for work or something, I would move to New England. I loved being there. So that's number one, is I loved the environment. And then number two would be that I loved the cast and the crew and working with them and becoming friends with them. It's definitely, I think, a lot of lifetime friendships were formed in the making of this show. And partially because of COVID and us having to wait and then going, and then, we were all sort of locked in together. And then also like being really proud of the show and proud of what the show is doing, and really sort of brought us all closer. One of my favorite memories was all of us sledding. We went to there's like a golf course in Scituate, and all the cast came out to where I was staying, and we like went sledding with my kids and like all of us, and like it was just like a beautiful, fun, like wholesome experience, with everybody. And then the last thing I'll say is just that as I said, I'm really proud of the show, and I'm really proud of what the show had to say and how bold it was in its sort of taking a swing at a new storytelling device or sort of way of telling these types of stories. And being someone who is such a huge multicam fan, being a part of something that lets me do sort of the multicam shtick that I enjoy doing, and I hope I'm pretty good at, but also being a part of a show that actually said something and was important and wasn't just necessarily like filler TV. It was like something that had a real point of view, made me really proud as an actor and as an artist to be a part of that. So those are probably the 3 big things. I loved the place, the people, and what the show had to say.
I think you've said it perfectly. We're just about out of time, but before we let you go, are there any new projects for you on the horizon that people should be on the lookout for?
Sure. I got 3 things I'll promote. Okay. Number 1, I'll promote I have a fashion Instagram. Most people would probably not assume that the guy that plays Big Dumb Kevin is into fashion, but I love clothes and fashion. And so you can follow my fashion Instagram, which is at The Portly Gentleman, all one word. The Portly Gentleman.
Pictures. We follow it. Yep. Yeah,
yes. Thank you. So I'll promote that. Number 2, I have a show called High Desert that's going to be coming out on Apple TV. We shot the whole season. It's directed by Jay Roach, stars Patricia Arquette and a bunch of other people, but she's the star of it, and produced by Ben Stiller. We shot the whole first season. I actually shot it at the exact same time that I was shooting Kevin, so I was kind of flying back and forth between LA and Boston when we were shooting the season. But that's going to be coming out, I think, in maybe the beginning of next year, and I have a very fun role on that show. I'm in almost all the episodes there, so check out High Desert when that comes out. And then the last thing I'll promote is, as a fellow podcaster, is I have a Christmas podcast that really has sort of materialized into like a real thing, sort of surprisingly. I'm a massive Christmas fan, and so a buddy of mine here in LA, we found out that we were both huge Christmas fans, and last Christmas season, we started doing this show called Christmas Countdown Show, where we would do top 10 lists of Christmas songs and foods and movies and TV specials. And we really did it with the thought that only our parents and our wives would listen. And we're now the #1 Christmas podcast on Spotify and on Apple. And we've been downloaded in like 175 countries, and it's like really exploding. So our season 2 of the Christmas Countdown Show will be coming out starting October 17th and running through Christmas. So definitely check that out.
That's super fun. It's like you and Oprah, like for the must know things of the season.
That's right. Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Yeah.
We have to know, Eric, what are you watching right now on TV? And what do you think Kevin would be watching if he lived?
I think Kevin would be watching a lot of CBS sitcoms. I think that's in his wheelhouse. Or he'd be watching old reruns of, All in the Family or Blue Bloods, or I think he actually talks about, I got to fire up my Blue Bloods DVDs. It seems like his type of show. What right now, I'm watching. I have like 2 episodes left of Only Murders in the Building, which I'm just
it's such a good one.
Loving, absolutely loving.
So good.
I recently finished Vikings, the History Channel show.
Sure. Yep.
I didn't watch it when it first came out, and I am Scandinavian, in my heritage. So I knew that I wanted to watch it, and I was like, I should watch it at some point. And then I started it and just loved Vikings. So I recently finished Vikings. I'm on a bit of a Vikings kick. Very excited for Yellowstone to come back. I'm a big fan of that show. But yeah, there's so much good TV on right now. We're really living in sort of an embarrassment of riches in regards to storytelling and the amount of shows that we can watch, and everything can become so much more niche because it just has the ability to do so. And that's almost the best way to get an audience, is to really, just as storytellers and showrunners, there's so many people that are just making like really niche, interesting shows and not worrying about like, oh, is this going to get, a 7.2 on the, the scales of getting, the numbers. And it's really just about telling interesting, compelling stories. So, those are the main things that I've been watching recently.
We run one of the big Yellowstone podcasts. We'll have to have you on this season.
Yes.
Oh my God, I would love that. I would love that so much. Yes.
Some rip impressions.
We'll definitely.
Oh yeah.
We'll slide into your DMs and invite you on.
Oh my God. Yes.
We're actually starting up. We're starting to gear up actually for that new season now. So.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I just am so excited.
Besides the Portly Gentleman, where can else people find you on social media? If they want to keep up with all of the Eric Peterson news out there?
My Instagram is at Eric Pete. My Twitter is Eric Peterson 44, and those would be the 2 best places to sort of follow me.
Eric, thank you so much for coming on. I had a thought while we were talking here, and I wasn't sure if I was going to ask you. And you don't have to be on the spot for it now. I know I'm really winding this up now.
I'm so excited.
When you have some downtime, I would be stoked if you could record a couple of bars of Imagine All the Pee Holes. When I was putting together
I'll give it to you right now. I'll give it to you right
Please.
now. That was such a funny joke to me. It's so stupid and so juvenile, but I remember like saying that to Alex, like in our, off-campus house, as we called it, the dad pad. I'd be like, imagine all the pee holes. It's just so perfectly stupid. But yeah, I should do it one more time with the Kevin accent. So he would go, imagine all the pee holes. It's easy if you try. Yeah, and then it could go on. I'll record a full version and send it to you guys.
I was making spaghetti for my son in the kitchen last week, and he was like, what the hell are you singing? I was like, it's going to make sense to you when you watch the episode.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
That's great.
Eric, than't you so much. And we can't wait to have you on. Maybe we'll have you on for High Desert when that comes out.
That would be great. That'd be
any
great.
excuse to have you back on. We're looking forward to it.
Thank you guys. Appreciate everything you do and big fans of both of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Eric.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
We just want to give a big thanks to Eric for his time and for going so long with us, and to the AMC PR folks for helping set up and schedule all these interviews that we've had this season. We've gotten to talk to Alex Bonifer, we talked to Eric, we've talked to Valerie Armstrong. We actually have another interview coming up before you get to our finale coverage with director Anna DeCosa, who ended up directing 12 of the 16 episodes of Kevin Can Fuck Himself. That will be the next episode you get in your feed if you're subscribed to Kevin Can Podcast Himself, which you should be. And then the series finale, Caroline and I are hard at work on getting that ready for you. That will be out probably a couple of days after the series finale drops on AMC on Monday, I guess it's October 10th. So, yeah, so keep a lookout for that, and we'll be back soon. And thank you for listening to Kevin Can Podcast Himself. If you wouldn't mind heading over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and rate, review, and subscribe. And while you're there, if you could, leave us a 5-star review. If you do, we'll read it on the air, probably, especially if you say nice things about us. And, it helps with the show. It helps with the visibility, and we really appreciate it. So thanks so much for you guys for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.